Today we're still on the mountain, preparing for tomorrow's Torah portion, Behar, and it's all about the mountain at the end of the day. Now, last week we looked at the great mountain that will come down, and this week we're going to spend time in looking at the symbolism of what the mountain entails. Now, if you can remember, those who follow the parashas in the book of Shemot or Exodus, specifically Exodus 19 to 24, it's all about Israel approaching the mountain, and then it's the instructions. It's all about the instructions of creating and building the tabernacle. Now, the symbolism of the tabernacle that we discovered is basically a mountain representation that is mobile. So they basically took the mountain with them when they left, and every time they set up the tabernacle, it's like setting up the mountain. So looking at it from that perspective, it gives us the idea that Yahweh is always with them, and Yahweh is always connected to the mountain. The high place, Har, it's also the word Cherev, that means sword and knife. It also means dry place. What's quite interesting is that Yahweh will meet you in a dry place. He didn't meet Lot and his family in Sodom. He met with Abraham on the mountain, at the mountain, in the dry place. He didn't go down to the valleys where there's a lot of rivers and waters. He went down to the desert places to work with his people and to speak to his people. So if you are going through a dry place, through a difficult time, you are closer to Yahweh than you think. And Yahweh will draw near to you if you turn your attention to that and be sensitive of his presence. So remember, what allows Yahweh in your life and what blocks Yahweh is your understanding, your perception, and also your awareness and your faith. So if you're not aware of Yahweh's presence, you won't acknowledge his presence, and you will basically ignore his presence, even though you are with him in a dry place. Now, what Israel did that was wrong, they murmured and they complained, and they wanted water, and then they wanted food, and then they wanted the food of Egypt, and they just kept on going like a little 5-year-old sitting in a car on a long trip that's hungry and irritated. Now, in the same way, Yahweh wants to make us uncomfortable in a sense, because this world is not supposed to be comfortable. We're not supposed to make our abode in Egypt. We're not supposed to make our abode in a man-made mountain, which is called the Tower of Babel. We're not supposed to be comfortable in the system of Babylon, which is the religious systems today, where people change Yahweh's word. Now, this Torah portion, we will delve into those specific things, and I'm going to use a lot of gematria. So this one will be, your head will spin as we go through, and I have to do it, unfortunately, to prove and provide the second witnesses for the statements that I'm making that confirms the right interpretation of the scriptures, specifically about counting the Omer, when Shavuot actually is the day and the date that we celebrate Shavuot or Pentecost, the right count. And we're going to look at scripture, and there's enough evidence in scripture to figure this out. And then there's enough evidence within the gematria of the numbers of the count that confirm those places that they arrived at, or the events that's happening on those days within those counts. So we're going to look at that in depth to get a good foundational understanding, without a shadow of a doubt, know when Shavuot is, what the themes of Shavuot are, and also what is related to the days and the count that are interpreted wrongly. Now, I'm saying wrongly because people interpret the verse in Leviticus, I think it's Leviticus 24, verse 16 and 17. It's about the feast of Shavuot and how to count. It says to count 7 Sabbaths or 7 sevens. Shavuot means sevens. So it means count 7 weeks. That's also why Shavuot is called the Feast of Weeks. You count weeks. Now, according to the ancient culture, what is defined as a week? What is defined as a month? So that throw a bit of a spanner in the works if you don't understand it. But even if you apply it with our modern day Gregorian interpretation of our calendar, trying to interpret Yahweh's Hebraic text with an ancient calendar, it actually makes the outcome worse. So sticking to the biblical calendar, which is basically a 30-day month. Now, how does that work? Now, in our time, we observe the years, we observe the months, and we observe the days. The days are defined by the sun, and it gives us the sense of what time is. Now, time is divided into two things, light and darkness. Now, the amount of hours of light versus the amount of hours of darkness is basically what the sun defines, but it changes throughout the seasons. It's never the same. Then we're in daylight savings, then we're not, because the daylight is longer than the night time. And then there's winter solstice and summer solstice where the day and the night are equal. And that's actually a perfect representation of that. But because of the seasons, it shifts and it alters. So that means that we have a definition of what we call a day as calculated on an average value. In the same way, the months are defined by the moon. Specifically, how much light and how much darkness exist will define which phase of the moon you are in, and those moon phases are actually linked to the moon cycle, specifically the 4 main cycles, which is the first quarter, or actually the dark moon with a sliver, and then it's the first quarter, then it's the full moon, then it's the last quarter, and then it's the dark moon again. So there's 4 cycles, or 4 average weeks within a month that is driven by 4 moon cycles. And that's what the ancient culture interpreted as their monthly calendar. So within the month, there are leap days that allow the difference in time of light and darkness within the moon cycles, within the month cycle, due to the seasons. And in the same way, you get the years with a leap year and a leap month to adjust, to compensate for the changes of the seasons. So the same pattern exists from the leap year to the leap month to the leap week and the leap day as well. So everything is of the same pattern, of the same kind, part of the clockwork of Yahweh. I'm not going into detail of that. I'm just laying a bit of a foundation on what we are going to discuss and why it's a controversial issue. So I'll leave you with that today. I hope you have a wonderful day. So tomorrow is the Sabbath, and then we will discuss this topic in depth. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful Sabbath. Shalom.